Hi, I'm Tim from the Marathon Mates. Well, 2024 is nearly all run and done, and it's time for the Marathon Mates to reflect on the year that was. From the highs of getting our 6-star medals to the lows of races not gone quite to plan. From the many guests we've had on the show and the topics we've discussed, this episode will reflect on all of that and more. Are you ready to run? Let's go.
Welcome to the thrilling world of the flying runner, brought to you by the Marathon Mates.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to episode 78 of The Flying Runner. Can you believe it? 2024 is almost run and done, and what a year it has been for all of us. On this episode, we're going to reflect on the year that was, sharing our highs and our lows, as well as some of the highlights from episodes that we've recorded this year. But before we do any of that, as always, I'm joined by my marathon mates, Tony, Lucia, and of course, Tara. Guys, what a year it's been. I'm really looking forward to talking about the year that's been tonight on our episode. How are you been, and how's your running been over the last week or so? I'm going to start with you, Tony.
Running's been good, actually. I'll just bring my microphone down. Running's been actually, pretty good. I went for a 10K there Friday before work, so that was nice. That was part 2 of the virtual Honolulu Marathon that I'm doing, so that was good. That's probably the most I've ever run before a day at work. So that sort of excited me a little bit. And then I rocked up to something called Parkrun because someone was having a special day. And they'd done this thing called Parkrun over 350 times. And as well as that, they'd had a birthday. So I thought the least that I could do was show up there and run a parkrun at Fodders Forest in Brisbane in a hot an incredibly humid Saturday morning, but then we and thank you guys for rocking up there as well, and we had a wonderful breakfast. And for those guests that know, my wife is allergic to park runs, but she isn't allergic to a double stacked pancake for breakfast, so she did join it.
2 scoops of ice cream I noted as well.
She didn't eat all that ice cream. I did notice that she did not eat all that ice cream. But a big shout out to Paula. Happy 350th park run.
Yeah, and you got a big bowl of coffee I saw as well, Tony.
It was like a soup bowl. It was.
And Lucia, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. Had my long run today, so 15Ks. It actually felt really good. Like, it's still very hot and humid here in Sydney, but I was happy with how it went. Yesterday I actually did a park run because I normally don't do park run just because it doesn't necessarily always fit in with my schedule. But Tara and Tim, Lisa and Debbie were in town.
Yes.
So there was a whole bunch of us that did park run, and one of the newer ones in Sydney, Parama Park Run. And the highlight for me was the Disney ship was docked on the other side of the water. So I was in my elements. So it's a beautiful park run. Overall it's been good.
Nice. Yeah, well, the Disney ship has actually got one of our very big listeners on there at the moment, Angela Kite. Ange. Yeah, so she's actually on that Disney ship. Or she was on the Disney ship. She might not be now, but yes, she was. So big shout out to Ange. I hope you got a few laps done around that cruise ship deck for your running.
Yes, and I do have to apologise. Last week I mentioned all the people we caught up with at Parkrun, and I forgot to mention Angela and Phil.
Yeah.
So apologies, Ange, but you got to mention this week. And Tara, how's our running week been, I guess?
Yeah. So Tony mentioned that we went to Fodders Forest Parkrun yesterday, and yes, it was very, very hot and humid. I think I hit it in around about 31 minutes, so just trying not to be too fast there. And this morning we knocked out a 21K run. Still hot and humid, but got to make up for all that food that we're going to be eating over the next few days. So we thought we'd run it off before we start eating it. No, not really. It's
sleeping in on Sundays mornings suck. So
Yeah.
it's best to get up and do something. And we've got back to where we should be, 21 Ks on a Sunday morning.
Yeah, and I've been running with friends during the week. I've been doing a thing called night nav. So that's orienteering. And we might actually get Reese on to have a chat to us about night nav because he's the guru for it and he's been dragging me along. So
who's holding the map?
That's me. Yeah, and guess what? It doesn't have street names on it, so it's so interesting. For those who know me, I'm very directionally challenged when it comes to maps, and that's even with Google that's telling me where to go, and street names. So night nav or night orientation is very interesting with me, trust me.
So it's in the dark with a map with no street names.
Yep.
How do you even get back to the finish line?
And you've got 40 minutes to do it and to collect points. But we'll get Reese on and he can have a chat to us about night nav because it is an amazingly fun orienteering thing to do with a group of people. So it's really lots of fun. And I've been catching up with a really good friend who also listens, Diane. So Diane's been coming along and picking me up and we've been running in all different places. So yeah, we've been having lots of fun this week. I've been missing my normal running buddy, but I've picked up a few new ones over the last few weeks.
Yep. Yeah. And I guess the other bit of news or running news for us this week is I finally got to Hobart on Run Down Under. So I've now hit the most southern point of the map, and now we're heading up from Hobart, or I'm heading up from Hobart. You're 50, 60 kilometres in front of me, but I'll catch up.
That's because I keep getting lost on night nav.
But yeah, now we've just got to go up to Burnie and then across back to Melbourne and up to Sydney to finish off the map. So we're probably still another less than 12, 9 months away from finishing Run Down Under. But yeah, it'll be good. And if you don't know what we're talking about there, go back to episode whatever it was with Travis Island earlier this year, back in about January or February, where he discussed it. So definitely a big challenge to run around Australia virtually, and we've got almost all the capital cities bar Sydney now left. We've hit Melbourne, we've come across to Tassie, and now it's back to Sydney now from here. So onwards and upwards.
Awesome. Yep. That is awesome. Speaking of sleeping in, Sharon and I slept in this morning. We didn't get up till about 3 minutes past 5. So
nice.
Geez, were you okay? Not feeling too sick or anything?
Yeah, it's just
you woke up and it was bright daylight and you're like, what is this thing?
It's summer. That's what it is. It's just summer. So there's no such thing as sleeping in a Queensland summer unless you've got really dark blackout curtains. So
and really good aircon.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you for that. Now it's that time of the week where we talk about the news. Tony, what's been happening around the world of running over the past few days?
Yeah, I always expect Tim just to do the news, and every now and again I look at the run sheet and say, oh, my God, I'm doing it. So, so during the week, Sydney Marathon announced time qualifiers, and the ballot's closing. When's it closing, Lucia? 30
December.
Yeah. So so by the time this episode drops, you don't have a lot of time. I think this will drop on the 29th or thereabouts or somewhere close to that. So but there is a qualifying standard that they've provided, which is really, really interesting. So they haven't provided a great deal of details. I think there's 2 age limits, above 40 and below 40. But there is now a time qualification. Now, we're still not quite sure how it works. If people are already in the ballot and they now will go outside of the ballot if they hit the time qualifiers. Tim, do you know much more about what's going on?
I looked at the Sydney website, and all it says at the moment is we are currently establishing our time qualification criteria. More information to come. And that's it. And it seems odd that they're doing this when everyone's in the ballot. So
yeah,
I don't sort of get it. Normally you do the qualifications separate to the ballot and you either go one or the other way or you go both. I think they're still finding their feet as to how they work as a marathon major and how this all works together. But obviously they've decided that they need more runners in the field, and maybe this is a way to get more runners into the field. Maybe the ballot isn't as big as and as deep as what they think it should be or could be. So maybe they're looking to entice runners in a different way. I'm not really quite sure. All I can say is probably if you are interested in entering via the qualification process, just stay tuned to the Sydney Marathon social media pages and their website to provide more information as it comes to light. But it's definitely going to happen. We just don't know what it looks like.
So, Luke, any inside knowledge there?
Not on that one, no, because that just came about, I think, it was only the other day, because normally I see one of the guys that he's one of the ambassadors on a Tuesday, but I think the time qualify part came out after that. So no, I don't. That's one thing I don't have insider knowledge on.
It's all just very interesting. So it feels like the Sydney Marathon from this year, 2024, is going to be completely different in 2025. We're seeing the ballot, we're seeing the candidacy club, we're now seeing time qualifications. So it's almost like they threw it all up in the air and said, we need everything for to be a major, and they're doing it. So, and as Tim said, they're quite rightly just trying to work out how it all fits in together, the puzzle. So stay tuned. Once we know, we'll put it on the podcast, but of course, make sure you're following Sydney Marathon on their socials. Now, this is one...
Before we go any further, Tony and Lucia, Tara and I have got some big news. This week, we've withdrawn from the Sydney Marathon ballot.
Look at Lucia's face.
we have withdrawn. We've officially withdrawn and taken our name out of the ballot. We've gone in via a tour company, via Travelling Fit. So we've now been able to...
Oh, look at her face. She's got this whole relief like it was just,
So we are
Thanks for the warning.
So we now have a confirmed entry for Sydney, as do many other people. And I know a number of other tour companies around the world released their packages this week, and numerous people are going in via that method as well. So it is a different way of getting in. And, you know, for us, we've done all our majors with Travelling Fit. It gives us confidence that we know we're in. And we get to do an Aussie major at home via Travelling Fit to see how different it is compared to travelling around the world. So big news.
Yeah, congratulations, and looking forward. At least then we've got an excuse, Luch, to sort of hang around the Travelling Fit crew when they are in Sydney.
Like you needed any excuse, Tony.
Well, there is a booze cruise, I think, on the Friday night before the marathon. So we go with that.
I might have to reach out to some people that I know and say, any chance that if we pay the dollars to jump on the booze cruise? But anyway, we'll see what happens. So that's good. At least you've got certainty, and I would imagine that there would be a number of people now. And once again, it's created conversation, hasn't it? The Travelling Fit are actually opening up to a homegrown major to Aussie residents, and usually it's Aussie residents travelling internationally that they get the license for. So we may see a bit of a shift in the way sports tourism and sports travel companies do majors in the future. Yeah,
it's also a little bit weird, I thought, because when we've travelled overseas, a lot of the other local tourist companies don't get access to their own local marathons. So I know that's one of the things
with
most Americans struggle with, is that they don't get tour group access to a lot of their main marathons. So it will be interesting how long that goes for. I presume it will go for a while, because the guys at Travelling Fit have got some, really good contacts there. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens worldwide with this, and whether other local tours will be able to host them in their own countries going forward.
And just one more thing on Sydney, because I got an email today that they have dropped some of the marathon merch. So my question is, are we going to see the same impact or the same hype about people buying the jackets this early, just like we do with Boston? Just putting it out there.
You just want to buy one so you can wear it, don't you?
No, even I think it's a bit too early.
while we're
Jen's
speaking,
not wearing it because it's so hot at the moment down in Sydney. So,
hey, while we're talking about pre-drops and pre-sales of merch, right? Tokyo released their pre-sale opportunity for jackets and whatnot recently, in the last month. And like I would have, and Tim, I'm a bit of a business person, right? As you know, so I would have thought having a pre-sale, you'd almost have like an unlimited amount of things that you would sell, because then you know how much to produce. But oh no, Tokyo's got to be different. They're actually they've had sellouts of their pre-sale. And I'm just thinking, that's ridiculous. That just sounds stupid. So
It's still got 2 and a bit months to print more merch. You would have thought they'd do it from a monetary point of view.
yeah, it's almost like they're purposely going out there and say, we're just going to annoy people, right? So we're going to do this, and it is going to be better, but you know, there's going to come a time where we just say, no, that's it. So we close it up. So, but hey, just on with the news. Otherwise, Tim will get mad at me. And Tim was talking about this over breakfast yesterday, and I hadn't really got the full details of this. I'd heard about it, and I think Tim posted something in our little chat. But how much would you pay to run a marathon PB? And there's a project. It's a new race that's been created to give runners a chance to set a personal best, or a PR if you're in America, on the flattest and fastest course in a super controlled environment. We're not talking Kipchoge lasers on the back of a car, but we are talking about a super controlled environment. Ben Rosario has invited 1,000 of the world's fastest amateurs, so 500 men, 500 women. My invitation must have been lost in the post, for US $520, which, what's that, about 800, 700, roughly, thereabouts.
The Aussie dollar's dropped, actually. It's probably closer to 900.
Yeah, okay. These participants, known as the Gold Wave, will be treated like pros, with amenities including pace groups, indoor warm-up areas, bathrooms, a bag drop, and 2 big fluid stations on each of the 6.75 kilometre loop. The race is going to be held at Wild Horse Pass Resort in Chandler on the same criterium-style course used by the Marathon Project in 2020. The 2020 event saw Canada's Natasha Wodak run an Olympic standard time of 2:26, which earned her a spot on the 2020 Olympic team for Tokyo. So Gold Wave registration is open only to men who have run under 2:45. That's the reason why I didn't get my invite. Just worked it out. And women who've run under 3:10 for the marathon. Or
didn't get it.
And there's half marathon times of 1:17 for men and 1:30 for women or non-binary. The race aims to be the deepest and fastest marathon in North America. My mind's doing mental gymnastics at the moment. It's a 6.75 kilometer loop, and they're going to run the fastest marathon. So what's that? 7 loops, give or take?
Like that, yeah.
Wow. The professional field will be limited to 100 men, 100 women. They're paying US $209. Elite pace groups will target times from 2:06 to 2:35. So the cost of the marathon project is double the entry fee of the Boston Marathon, triple the cost of the Valencia Marathon in Spain, which is currently the fastest marathon in the world, where 5,200 runners, as Tim talked about a couple of weeks, ran under sub 3 in 2:24. Would you pay more to run to as close to perfect conditions to get a PB? Luch, what are your thoughts on that? Are you willing to pay to get you a PB?
Well, we know I'd pay for some things, i.e. early access to an expo, but I think even I've got limits, because you can do all the work, but nothing is guaranteed, because you don't know what's going to happen on the day. So I personally, I wouldn't, because I just, I don't know how they can say that they're able to guarantee, because you can't guarantee anything these days. So it's a big no for me.
Yeah, I don't know if they're guaranteeing, but they're trying to create the environment where the aim will be Tim, I know that you've been hitting some pace of late and you've been enjoying that. So what are your thoughts around paying extra to get into to do it, have a chance to do a PB?
The old me, when I was time focused, would look at something like that and go, yeah, I'd be interested in having a crack at it. Would I pay more for it or double the price of a normal race entry? Probably not. But I would be interested in running as possibly as fast as I could. I get that there's other variables that could go wrong on the day. You know, your gastro might not be right or your hydration might not be right. But if you've got a course that is dead flat, that is, you know, limited by wind, there's very little wind on it, you've got plenty of water stations, you've got ideal warm-up conditions, I'd probably have a crack at it, but I wouldn't pay double a normal race entry for it. And I'm no longer time focused on, you know, trying to be the fastest I could ever possibly be. But I do get the concept. I do understand why people would be interested in something like that. I get that if you are in that space where you want to push your time down a little bit, particularly if you are at that 2:45 and you want to get down to 2:30, well, that might be your opportunity to do it. Less slow people around you and more people that are, you know, you can form a pack with in the race to run with at a more consistent pace.
I don't think they're going to be short of contenders to do it. So I get the feeling it will be very highly subscribed. They may even have to have a ballot. But yeah, I think there will be enough people in the world that will create that as a commercial success for them. Would I do it? No. And it's really that whole concept of not really knowing what the day's going to be like. Still, you can set it up, but who knows? You might ruin an ankle on your first run around the pack, run around the 6.75 kilometer loop. So, and doing that 7 times.
No, I'm good. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't pay extra. I like actually running slow and enjoying my marathons. I get my money's worth out of it, and that's not getting my money's worth. So I'm so sorry. If I'm paying like $900 Australian, there is no way I'm paying that for like less than 3 hours of time.
What if the medal was like 3 times the price of the 6-star medal? And it was fancy and glowed in the dark and spun and
no, because it's still not a real marathon to me. So sorry. No. I don't see value in that to me personally.
Mind you, Tara, in respect to the way you run and the metronomic state that you get in with your pace, all you'd have to do is hit that. What's the pace for 2:45? About 3 minutes or a little bit less. Just get into your pace and go for it. I think you'd be able to do that. So
sure, yeah, I'll be knocking off 3 minutes off my kilometre time. No problems, Tony. Like what I do at parkrun, that 6-minute pace. No, definitely not doing that. Sorry. Yeah.
All righty. So the other piece of good news, and most of us are morning runners. So, and Tim, I know that you love a good scientific study. So, according to a new study, and of course you love it, you put it together. So, according to a new study published in the Journal of Sleep Research, of all things, runners who typically jump out of bed at the crack of dawn will be more likely to achieve a marathon time goal than a night owl training partner. Now, that's incredibly interesting. The study was conducted 936 participants at the 2016 London Marathon. Co-author of the study, Jesse D. Cook, said marathons are good settings for this type of research since they typically start early in the morning. The data was surprisingly clear. People who identify as morning people who don't need a big bowl of soup as a coffee run a whopping 13.9 minutes faster on average than people who identify as evening people. And more strongly, the identification, the greater the difference. And moreover, those who found it takes more than 30 minutes to transition to being fully alert after waking also run slower. So is that saying, Tim, that you've got to jump out of bed and get out the door as quickly as you can to be a faster runner? Or for those that are taking a little bit of time to wake up?
No. So what it's saying is, if you're the sort of person that wakes up at 5 o'clock and you wake up and you get going straight away, you're not lingering around in bed, you're not taking 20 minutes, half an hour to wake yourself up. You know how sometimes some mornings you take some time to wake up. Generally, you will be quicker the more alert you are when you wake up. But what it also says, the next part of it, even if you do wake up and it takes you 30 minutes to transition to being fully alert, you still run quicker than somebody who is an evening runner.
Very interesting. I hate running in the evenings, and it's really not something I enjoy.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's good that they've studied that. Luch, what are your thoughts? Are you a morning or an evening runner?
I'm a morning runner because I'm the type that when I get home from work, I don't want to be doing anything. Just have dinner, sit on the couch and watch TV. Unless it's some kind of race that is only run at night. I think I've maybe run at night a handful of times, but no, for me, the morning, because I find for me, once I'm done, that's my day set.
Yeah, it's just good to knock it over. And Tim and Tara, you're both morning people. You're always up early down at Sandgate, Shorncliffe sort of area, running by the water. So does that mean we would all be slower if we were evening people?
Yeah. Yes, it would mean we would be, and it would probably mean some of the races that we look back on where we've only just scraped in through some of the cutoffs, we may not have made those cutoffs if we were evening runners, is what the study is suggesting.
So for everyone listening or watching, let us know, are you a morning runner or an evening runner? Because I want to have all the evening runners in any races that I do. So we'll do our own test and see how it goes, hey? So,
what I like about that study is it's not just a short little study. It was 936 participants, and they've studied them for quite some period of time as they do their marathon running and taking into account London Marathon results. So there is actually some science there. It's obviously there's other things that might account for it: age, height, weight, caffeine habits, those sort of things. But the stats don't lie. The data doesn't lie. If you wake up early and you're the sort of person that just literally leaps out of bed the moment you wake up and you're out there running, you're running 30 minutes faster on average than what you would be if you were a nighttime runner. And if you were somebody who takes some time to wake up, it may be, sorry, not 30 minutes, 13.9 minutes faster if you get out of bed straight away. But if you wake up within 30 minutes and get out of bed, you're still running quicker than somebody who wakes up in the evening or gets up in the evening.
So what will be interesting, and Tony, you're with us on this race as well. We're morning people. We're about to run a race. It's only 13K, so it's not. Sorry, just. Is that a better word?
No,
it's
a 13. It's a 13K New Year's Eve resolution run.
That's at night time. So this is going to be very interesting. Is it a case that as morning runners we're going to fall over and die on a nighttime run, or are we actually still going to be able to run this? Because I don't run nighttime either.
So the study didn't
apart from night nav, and then I'm getting lost.
The study didn't go into that, from what I understand, but it makes sense. At the end of the day, you're tired. At the end of the day, I notice when I run at night, I've got food in my gut that I wouldn't normally have in there. Normally, I've purged my stomach during the night, and then I'm running not on an empty stomach, but on a stomach that's got less food in it. I've got less water sloshing around in my stomach as well. So it's definitely a different way of running when you're running at nighttime, particularly if you're an early morning person like us.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So I did the 12K last year at the New Year's Eve resolution run. It was my first serious run back after doing the ankle after Chicago. And I set myself a time for those 12Ks. I thought I'd come home about 1:30, and I came home around 1:30. So, yeah, who knows? Just take care of yourself New Year's Eve. Don't eat too much. Have a bit of a kip in the afternoon and see what happens. So, and that's the news. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Tony, for the news this week. But now it's the fun time of the show, the bit where we get to reminisce a little bit about the year that was. So first up, guys, I want to ask you about your running journeys. I'm going to start with you, Tony, first. What were your running highs and your running lows this year? And I suspect all of our highs will probably be the same. But I'll start with you, Tony.
Yeah, very similar, I would imagine. You know, I made mention on last week's episode that it just seems so weird that Sharon and I were plotting out 2024. It just seems like yesterday, and now we're at the end of 2024. So it's been for me, I think it's been a good year. So from a highs perspective, obviously getting 6 stars at Tokyo was awesome. And even though we talk about Tokyo as being a really tough race for us because Sharon had cramps, the reality is that it was only like 7 seconds slower than Chicago, which we call a good race. So from a timing perspective, we actually did pretty good. So the only thing around that left a little bit of a flat line was just the experience at the 6-star tent. And we've talked about this in a previous episode. And maybe Tokyo, where there's always, they're still trying to catch up from COVID, I think. There's always thousands of 6-star finishes. And by the time that they got through to Sharon and I there was just, the tent was flat, and we did not get the same experience potentially as what we saw some of our friends get in the 6-star tents when they got it towards the end of the year. So that was great for us. I think the whole weekend of Sydney was an amazing highlight. It was great to run that as part of the candidacy of that particular race. And, you know, it still would have been a great weekend, even if they didn't make the major. It was just a good weekend. Seeing Lucia out there as where did I see you again? Just remind me, because I was
yeah.
That's right. I knew it was someone's chair. I just keep forgetting their name. But and there's Lucia celebrating with balloons and everything. How you run like that is beyond me. But anyway, so the whole weekend in Sydney was great. We did it with some friends, Kay and Jed. Well, Jed didn't run, but Kay certainly did. And the other highlight to me was the first 11 Ks of the Gold Coast Marathon. So after finishing Tokyo, we sort of went our separate ways for training, and I really wanted to, you know, go as close to 5 as I could with my marathon at the Gold Coast. And the first 11 Ks, I revisited my stats the other day, and I was at 1 hour 10 at the 11K mark. So I was in line not just to go close to 5, but really go quite a considerable way under it. Now, I always knew it was going to be tough, and I had to hold on from about the 28 or 30K mark. But I felt right for that. And then, of course, the low light of that particular one was tearing my calf at 12K. So I went from running 6-minute kilometers to an 8-minute kilometer. So that sort of stuffed me up. But also the PBs that I had in that training journey. So, you know, I know Tim's not as time focused, but seriously, I'm not. But it was great to pick up a new 5K PB. Great to pick up a new 10K PB. I picked up a new half marathon PB at the Brisbane Half this year. And I picked up a new 30K PB, all in that training block leading into the Gold Coast. So I think that to me was a real highlight and gave me a real inspiration of what I can do over the next half year to get ready and prepare for Gold Coast and try and do it again. Low light, of course, Sharon's had problems with the feet. Now she's back on Ghost 13, so those problems aren't as... I don't know what it is about these magic shoes that call Ghost 13, but she's getting a lot of confidence back and enjoying her running. So who knows? Hopefully she'll have a better year too. So that was the highs and lows for me from a running journey.
Yeah.
Of course, New York's a high, but the race itself was not so great. But anyway.
Cool. Thanks for that, Tony. And Lucia, what were your highs and lows? I suspect it's going to be a high would be similar to Tony's, yeah?
Very, very, very similar. So I think for me, the ultimate was Boston and getting the 6-star there and getting the PB, because I've never trained so hard for a race in my life before. No mistakes. Center.
I just lost it. Sorry. For our listeners who are just listening, Tony reenacted Lucia crossing the finishing line, clapping her hands. And it is one of the all-time great finishes, and now Tara's just lost the plot.
It is very funny because Tony's reenactment was very, very accurate. So
very on point as well. I don't think anything is going to beat that because, like, as I said, I put so much work into training for Boston. like who knew training hard could actually pay off. It's only taken about 11 marathons to work that out. And doing my bit, and also doing my bit for Sydney in being a major, that was pretty, like, yeah, I'm just one person, but still ultimately just being part of the weekend. As Tony said, you could feel, you could honestly feel the vibe amongst the runners. It's like, can this actually happen? So it was pretty special. Another high. Now, I know you three are going to laugh when I say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. Being asked to be a permanent co-host of the podcast, I was quite happy when they would ask me. I'm like, oh, bless the common stocks. So that was really touching for me. Lows, just I don't know if I've had any, like, it's like I've been trying to think of any. I don't, like, possibly besides the type, like sometimes when I've had a cough and it's put me out of action for 2 weeks and then trying to come back, that would probably be my only low. But yeah, overall, I've been very fortunate this year. Like, maybe I didn't get the time I wanted to in Sydney, but that also could have been because I did stop and talk to friends a few times, so that may not have helped. Jury's still open on that one. But yeah, no, this year's probably been one of my better running years. But I think kind of a highlight for me as well was having my face on a billboard in Times Square. That was pretty cool.
That was awesome.
Yeah. And Team Ellis?
And yeah, Tara?
Oh, wow. Okay. I'll go with the lows to start with, because then we can go with the positives for the ending. But my low was, as everyone knows, Boston really did not go to plan. I had trained my absolute rear end off for that, and I'm glad I did, because I don't think I would have made it if I didn't. Being so unwell through Boston had really shook my confidence in marathon running. And now I've done 18 marathons, and I think that was number 17 or something, but it really threw my confidence, or maybe 16, 15. But I don't know. It really threw my confidence. Like, that one really threw me, and I was actually debating whether or not to give up marathon running and just give up the whole 6-star journey after Boston. Then we did Gold Coast, and I had a few issues in Gold Coast too. Unfortunately, not anything major, but it sort of threw the confidence out a bit more. And then I'm just like, oh, I've still got Chicago and New York to go. And then we hit Chicago, and it was like the perfect race. It was just the absolute perfect race. Like, you could not get a better day. Just everything went to plan, and I'm just like, oh, I've got my mojo back. So that really made me feel really, really good about myself, and that the training and the hard work that I've put into it came back again. Then New York was another really, really good race. It was just perfect again, wasn't it, Tim? So, and getting that 6-star medal at the end, like, I was actually bawling my eyes out by the end of that. Tim has got a video of it, and I think it's on Team Ellis Running, perhaps, if anybody does want to see me crying my eyes out with happiness, obviously. For those who have seen me doing Boston and crying my eyes out at the end of, or I don't think I even knew what I was doing at the end of Boston. There's a big difference between the end of Boston and the end of New York. So it's actually brought my confidence back for marathon running again. And New York, definitely the highlight for me. Getting that 6-star medal when I thought perhaps that was not going to actually even be a chance after Boston. So, yeah, that was my highlights. What about you, Tim? Same things?
Yeah, more or less the same things. Been in New York with all our marathon mates. There was a heap of us there that came over to celebrate it and run the event. And there was a couple of new timers, the first timers there, and a couple of repeat runners coming for their victory laps, Tony and Sharon being one. That was probably one of the highlights there, I think, for me, was that. Again, like Lucia, I don't really have a low light. Even Boston, I still really enjoyed it. It was still tough there at times, dragging Tara along and trying to keep her motivated and getting her up the hills and getting her to the finish line. But it was still a marathon in a different part of the world, in a city that I'm never going to probably go to again, but would love to go back to, because I love the city. It was a beautiful city. But Yeah, there's not a lot of lows for me this year. Again, like Lucia, I got through the year, touch wood, without an injury. I've run in different cities around the world. I've completed in 4 marathons. It's all positives for me. So for me, I'm on a high and really looking forward to the next 12 months or more. So they're our highs and lows, I guess. But reminiscing about guests we've had on the show and looking at the guests we've had, I've just given I've got a list there in front of all you guys of the lists of guests we've had, and we've had some really great guests on our show this year. For me, my most memorable moment on the show and our most memorable guest for me was getting Fleur Cushman on the show from Currents and listening to what Currents can do for runners, everyday runners, as far as improving heart rates and improving recovery and removing GI issues from runners.
And boosting that's one of the reasons why I could go from Boston to New York in such a short period to having such a good run, and that's because of Currents.
Yeah, so for me, that was probably one of my guests of the year, and I know it rated highly. But Tony, what would you say was some of the good guests that you recall from this year?
It was interesting you put the names in front of us, Tim, because you are right. Every guest there was just amazing, and even our very first guest of this year was a young lady called Lucia Benko. The energy of Robert Wang stood out to me. That was a really special episode because Robert may as well have hosted that podcast. He can talk. He's got that American twang. He does such an amazing job with that World Major Marathon group on Facebook. I don't know what the numbers were, but I think it's now about 25,000 people in the group. So it's incredible. But he was a real standout. To me, I think Hayden Harbard from the 40 Run community was just a gentleman, just really humble. He had a bit of a laugh. For those that listen to 40 Run knows that Hayden gets a bit of the brunt from Chris Ford, who's 40, and Hayden just takes it with grace. And he was so willing to come on our show and share his 6-star journey, which was awesome. And then, of course, in my mind, I think we've had 2 world exclusives this year. One was the recent episode with Dale Q, who ran the Shanghai Marathon. There is no other podcast out there that has dissected the Shanghai Marathon in the way that we did. So I think we'll hold that mantle. And just while we're talking Shanghai, we haven't heard if they've passed their first year of assessment yet. They would be the first marathon to have done it if they do. It's actually quite you would believe the longer it goes on, the less likely they are to have passed the first one.
I still don't think that they will pass. I think they'll pass based on the running experience and the on-course experience. I don't think they'll pass it based on the off-course stuff.
Yeah, and Shanghai sounds really exciting, especially that post-finish experience that Dale talked about. But then the pre-registration experience seemed really challenging and frustrating. And then, of course, you've got state apps that you can't use when you go into China. So I think there are some challenges. But the other major marathon that didn't get much love on the other, let's call it an industry of podcast running podcasts, was Tim, I'm going to rely on you for the right name here, the Paris Public Marathon between the men's and the women's Olympic marathon. And we had Nikki Francis join us, who had run that event, and it was quite challenging for her. She had some stomach issues and found the event really challenging. But we heard all about the hill. We heard all about the sights. We heard about the crowds out at 1 o'clock in the morning that were cheering them on. It was so I think in so many ways we got 2 exclusives with those 2 guests, Dale and Nikki. But I just want to thank every single guest that came on. I learned so much from each and every one of them, and some of them were just so inspiring. Claudia Stevenson, amazing. So it's a tough one to answer because, trying to pinpoint just the one. But yeah, it's they're sort of my takeaways from that. Luch?
I think for me, I loved when we had Jai on, because just to understand how much of an impact the IMP has had on people, I think it's not very well understood if you're not inside the running community. So I think the fact that she came on and talked through the challenges that she had when she did it through COVID, and just the inspiration it gives people, because it just shows that, to me, it proves that if you put your mind to it, you can do anything you want. So I found that one really, really interesting. And as Tony said, they've all been fantastic. And another one, and I can't remember his name, but he's your friend, Team Alice, the guy who was the race director, who's been race director.
Phil.
Phil Hungerford.
Yeah, because just to understand what goes into setting up a race, and when people say, "I can't believe the Sydney Marathon's $250," but for people to understand, well, it's not just as simple as what you think, and everything that has to go into it. Don't get me wrong, I knew a lot went into it, but just hearing it from someone who's had that firsthand knowledge and experience was just fascinating. So those are probably, even though they've all been amazing, but those ones I really, really enjoyed.
Yep. And Tara?
Oh, look, I can't actually pinpoint one particular person, because I think every single person that's come on has, as Tony said, I've taken something back and away from them. But we've had Lucia, and reminiscing about Dopey Challenge with you, Luch, was just fantastic. And just hearing your experience from a different view from what ours was fantastic. As you said, Tony, Hayden is an amazing person. We met him in Chicago in real life. The most genuine, nice person that you could actually come across ever. Shout out to Travis Ireland to do the Run the World thing. He's started that up by himself. Amazing person. Kel Walker. We actually met him in person as well at the GC50, and he's a super nice guy, gives back to the community, wonderful. Jen Callett, who's a good friend of ours, of all of us, we've all come across her in our marathon journeys. Super Jen with her fantastic speed and such a lovely personality.
And humble as
well. Very, very much so. Rob, as you said, Robert Wang, Reese Williams with his trail running and his ultra stuff that he did. Claudia, what her thing was, visually impaired, what her whole entire struggles, or not even struggles, but her challenges, how hard it is or how much different it is for her to do things than what it is for you and I. Kai Luck, and thank you to Lucia for introducing us to Kai. He's a wonderful guy who's got some wonderful stories to tell as well. Jai, as you said, Lucia, Phil Hungerford, Alice Backey. Now we are thinking we hopefully might be able to get Alice back on and talk to us about her marathon experience, because if you go back and listen to her podcast that we did, she's got some really good information there, and we want to give you an update as to what goes on.
She's revolutionised running training, I think, just by running 10Ks and no more.
Well, let's not say that just yet, because she's got a lot of background there that goes with that as well. Fleur Cushman, a huge shout out to the Cushmans. Without them, Currans and my running journey would not be happening the way it is. Nikki Francis, look, Tony and Sharon rave about Nikki and how good she is for them as well. But her whole entire story is wonderful. Dale Koo, and of course we just had Steve on as well, just recently, for his trail running experience. And every single one of our guests have been very, very wonderful to have on. So
very, very giving, very receptive. It's been a wonderful year, and let's hope 2025 follows the same path.
Yeah, that's it. Now, memorable moments, guys. Any memorable moments for me? from a podcast point of view, my memorable moments were running into Hayden, as you said, in the Chicago Marathon 5K race. We ran into him. I don't know, there's 20,000 runners, and we happened to run right where he's running, and a pack of 40 runners who are all around him, all saying they listen to the show, and a number of them, or one of them particularly, talking about her mum who lives in Townsville. Hello again. So that was one of the memorable moments of actually seeing it for real. For me, the other memorable moments were sitting on the couch in New York, recording some of the lives with you, Tony, and Tara on our journey around the US earlier this year. And the other memorable moments that I have personally around the podcast are I spend all this time getting the run sheet right, and no one sticks to it. I put all jokes in there, and the jokes they fall flat. I try my best.
Maybe it's your humour, Tim.
Tony, have you got any memorable moments this year from the podcast itself?
Yeah, I think the memorable moment for me was Lucia's tips. I think that was such a great segment, Lucia. Just speaking about the run sheet, those couple of episodes we did where we did not have a run sheet.
It worked.
It was also also pretty good, I think. So no, too many moments to mention, and I really do appreciate the fact that Tim does have a very disciplined approach to the run sheet, because the podcast would probably go for 3 hours if he didn't. And it is good. And when we first started talking about putting this podcast together, I've been podcasting since 2014, so I know a little bit about it, and I think it's probably fair to say Tim and Tara were just, we'll do it, let's give it a go and see what happens. But we've all sort of found our own little niche in what works for us in the podcast, and I'm just really, really appreciative of the run sheet. And I also, because my camera's right in front of me and my screen's just slightly to the left, and when I go off script, I sort of, you can always feel it with Tim, with whether it's a facial expression, or he puts his head down, or he looks at Tara. As soon as I go off script, I know that Tim's going, oh no, he's gone off script again. Where's this going to go? So, but yeah, the whole year, the whole podcast is a memorable moment for me. So, but Lucia's tips, they were awesome, and we know you've got fans now too, Luch. So
Yes.
Yeah, I think my memorable moment, Boston getting Luch on to do some lives with us when she was over there, and asking her, do you want to come and do the podcast with us? It's been wonderful to have Lucia's experience on there as well. So I think that's my memorable thing for me, is actually having another female on here as well with us, and such a lovely person to be there. So yeah, that would be mine. Yep.
And Lucia?
Thinking about it, I think it makes me laugh every time when Tony reenacts me crossing the Boston finishing line. He does it so well. It cracks me up.
It is a video of joy, Luch, and that's what excites me, because you can see you had worked so hard for that, and you were just so focused, and to see that release and I guess pride that you had when you crossed that line, it just brings a smile to my face. So I'm certainly not stirring you up. I just love it. I just wish there were more finish lines where people were just so excited like that, because it was just magical for me. So
maybe I need to do that as my thing next year with Gold Coast in the quaddie. After each race, like, thank God I'm done. Thank God I'm done.
All right, thanks, guys. Now, the last thing before we finish up, we do a fast six when we have our special guests on the show. Questions, because there's 6 major marathons, but next year there's 7 major marathons, as we know. Any thoughts on what a potential 7th question might be?
Or should we put it to our listeners and ask them what they would like to hear as well?
Okay. So just to go through it with the listeners so they get a bit of a refresher. The 6 questions currently are podcast or music, best running advice ever given to you. What advice would you give to someone starting out, uphill or downhill? And we all know Tim's thoughts on that. Gels or blocks, and favourite shoes to run in. So
I think one should be free race entries for life or free shoes for life.
Oh.
That's an interesting one, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't given it much thought, which is crazy because it's my little segment. But
well, if any of our listeners have got something that they think would be a great 7th question, otherwise we're going with Lucia's one. But look, we will take some good suggestions as well.
We might put it up on the socials during the week, Tony. What do you think? And leave it open for a while. So.
Make a poll.
Embroidered Boston jacket or
yeah, but not all of our guests would get that because they're not all going for the majors. So, anyway. All right. Thanks, guys. It's been fantastic to reminisce a little about the year that's been and the journey we've all taken in the past 12 months. Before we normally finish up, I normally give a tip, but this week, because it's one of Lucia's most memorable moments and Tony's as well, I'm going to hand over to Lucia for Lucia's tip of the week. So over to you, Lucia. What is your tip for the week?
Not necessarily a tip, but I thought, well, and because this is going to be the last episode of 2024, it's more about taking the time to reflect on what you've achieved throughout the year in your running. Everyone may not have had a good year. Some people may have had better years than others. And I think the fact that we can run and not everyone can, I think that sometimes that can be lost on people, because I remember that was one thing I mentioned when I spoke on the stage at the Sydney Marathon Expo. It was just being able, as I said, being able to run. So it's not necessarily to focus on fast times, and taking a quote from Tara, focus on the finish line, not finish times, which sometimes I think people do lose sight of. So really, I think at this time of year, take the time to reflect. What worked well for you this year and what didn't work well? What can you change next year? What do you want to try and achieve next year? So as we know, there's not much happening race-wise at the moment. So it's just a perfect time to really reflect on what your running journey has been in 2024. And that's what I've been doing lately. It's like working out, okay, what worked well? What can I improve on next year? And what goals do I want to try and achieve next year? And definitely also set yourself some goals, because, yeah, we all love running, but sometimes it makes it easier when you have a goal to achieve. So, yeah, so just take time to reflect and set goals for 2025.
There you go. I agree with that, and I think you could call that a tip. I reckon that's a tip.
That's definitely a tip.
Yeah.
100% a tip.
Yep.
And it's an awesome tip, Lucia.
Yeah, 100% agree with it.
Hashtag Lucia's tips.
Last time only.
Oh.
No.
At least in 2024.
Last time this year, yes. All right. So this episode's about to end, but before we do that, Tara, what's on next week?
No, me?
No, yes, it is you. I forgot to put your name next to it.
Oh my goodness! So the person who does the run sheet has left Tony's name on here.
Yeah, because Tony did the news. He's done the tip. Therefore, you do what's next week.
Thank you. Wow. Okay. So thank you very much for that, Tim. It definitely is me. We will start a new year next week. My goodness. Okay. Well, that's sort of just, I know, a bit mind-blowing for me, because this year has gone so fast. But on that, it means new challenges, new training plans for us all. So next week's show, we're going to go in deeper into what we're doing new. Well, my goodness, can I start that again? Thank you, Tim. So we will start next week with a new year, and that means new challenges and training plans for us all. On next week's show, we will go deeper into what the new year means to us. We will talk about the races we are doing, and more importantly, our approach to training and preparing ourselves to do what we are able to do for these events. We will talk about our plans and how we will manage ourselves with the travel and running we've got planned. And as usual, it will be another fantastic episode and will not be one to be missed.
There you go. Thank you.
Well done, Tara.
Read the script. Well done. All right. Thank you, Tara. So that ends this awesome show that's been. I've had a lot of fun this afternoon recording this one. Before we finish up, though, we'd all love to wish you, our wonderful listeners, a very happy, safe, and prosperous 2025. We hope that all your running dreams come true in the new year and that you all remain healthy and injury-free and be able to tackle whatever challenges that you have set yourself for the year ahead. For my marathon mates that have joined us, guys, I've had so much fun talking to you today, reminiscing about the year that was. Thanks for joining me, and I wish you and your loved ones a very happy and healthy new year. See you on the other side, guys. As always, we love recording these podcasts for you, our wonderful listeners. We love hearing your feedback, so please like the episode wherever you're listening to it. Leave some comments either on the podcast platform or messages via our social media pages on Instagram, Facebook, and Messenger, or via our email address, happyrunning@flyingrunner.com. Leave a suggestion maybe for the 7th question on our Fast 7 for next year. As usual, video of the episode will be available at Spotify and YouTube, and audio will be on our Apple and Amazon and most other popular podcast platforms. Remember, every step forward is a victory. Lace up, hit the road, and we'll catch you on the next episode of The Flying Runner. Happy running and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.